So this is a review of the Oracle Touch espresso machine. Now it's made by a company called Sage in the UK, or better known as Breville in the rest of the world. Now, I'll start with the truth, which is for a decade, I haven't had an espresso machine at home. And to be honest, I haven't really wanted one. When people ask me, what espresso machine should I get for my house? Well, I ask them a question back. Do you really want a new hobby? Because that's what espresso at home is. For most people, it's an investment in equipment, but it's also an investment in time. When I got started working in coffee, I started selling little domestic espresso machines, and I know all too well that the romantic idea of getting up at the weekend, reading the paper, making a little cappuccino, that's very appealing to people. But it's not true. You skip the bit where you turn on the machine, you wait for it to get hot, then you dial in 2-3 shots to see how things are tasting, then you pull a couple shots, and then you spend some time cleaning up. And for me, well, the idea of paying £2 for someone else to do that to make me an espresso, that seemed like a good deal. And at home, I typically just brewed filter coffee. So taking this home for a little while, well, that was the first time in literally 10 years I've made espresso at home. And it was interesting. This is a £2,000 espresso machine, and that's quite a lot of money these days, and a lot of money to invest in an espresso machine, especially in one that's labelled as a bean to cup. For people who didn't want a hobby, that was kind of your choice, right? If you didn't want to do all the hard work, then you just push a button and the machine did its best and you got coffee. And they all had a problem that made them quite finicky, quite difficult to extract well with, and prone to breaking down. They were trying to work out how to get coffee from a grinder into a brewing chamber and then to get rid of it. And that moving of ground coffee, both wet and dry, is pretty difficult to do. And Sage's solution is pretty simple. You just get the human to do it. So this machine comes with a portafilter and a grinder, and it's all built in as one, and you're going to be the one that moves ground coffee around. That's going to be your contribution to the brewing process. So the way this thing works is kind of interesting because it's kind of against the typical obsessive, geeky, want to control every factor. And they know espresso making is hard, and so what they've done is take away some of the variables. What this means is that the way the grinder works is that when you lock it in, click it into place, and you click across to the right hand side, it'll start grinding. It'll grind, dose, tamp, the whole deal all in one go, leaving you a prepped portafilter ready to brew. So you lock that in and you hit go. Now it's a touchscreen, and this means you've got lots of choices. And what it lets you do is choose the different kind of drinks you want to make, choose the grind setting, and choose the brew time for each one. And that's another key part. This doesn't let you control the amount of liquid going through in like a volumetric might, or with weighing scales or something like that. It's going to brew at a fixed pressure for a fixed amount of time. Now this is no bad thing. By and large, what you might want to do is use your consistent dose setting, and therefore use a consistent brew time, and then simply adjust the grind setting, finer or coarser, to get the desired amount of liquid that you want in the kind of ideal brew time. So I'll just set the brew time to 28 seconds. I'll just use my grind setting to control my espresso brew ratio. Speaking about brew ratios, this thing, the setup it doses quite a lot of coffee into the portafilter. It's kind of dependent on the basket that you're using. Typically I brew coffees that taste good at a 1:2 to about 1:2.2 as a ratio. So if I put 20 grams in, I'm getting between 40 and 44 grams of liquid out in my desired brew time. Here, I'd probably say with those kind of coffees, you'd probably want to push them at least to 1 to 2.5. So if you have 20 grams of ground coffee, you probably want about 50 grams of liquid out. So to be honest, with certainly lighter roasts, shorter, tighter shots of espresso, closer to a ristretto, even like a traditional normal espresso, they're a little bit harder to do. If you enjoy that kind of thing and you're very texture driven, then lighter roasts may not be the answer for you, and you may want to brew with a slightly deeper, more developed roast that's going to give itself up a little bit more easily. Sage made waves with their first espresso machine, had really good temperature control. All of that stuff is still here. So they've done the kind of hard work on consistency and control while trying not to overload you with too many variables. So it brews pretty good tasting espresso. I got some very tasty shots out of it. It was pretty easy to use. It required reconfiguring how my brain works a little bit with the fixed dose and fixed time and just manipulating with grind, but I didn't mind that too much at all. One thing that this machine does incredibly well, and Sage have done for a little while now, is steam milk beautifully. Now this, the automatic steaming of milk, is not new on commercial equipment for sure. You know, there's been big commercial espresso machines that have been able to automatically texture milk to a really beautiful foam. Certainly you can pour great latte art with it. That's been around for a while, but these guys have been doing it more and more on domestic machines. And the quality is frustratingly good. When you can do something that good at home, you really have to question why this kind of technology just isn't everywhere all the time. And I get that, you know, the lack of craft may upset some people, but there's really no excuse left in the world for serving anything other than a really beautifully textured milk drink. Even if you can't pour latte art on the top, it should still have great texture. That technology is now very much available. So a couple quick things. You can program your milk temperature. It has a little thermocouple at the end of the steam wand there that senses the milk's temperature and stops at the right point. You can adjust texture of the milk as well. And one neat little feature is when you're finished steaming, when you push the steam wand back in, it purges itself automatically. Again, just thoughtful use of technology to make our lives a little bit easier. A few quick likes and don't likes. Things I like. The touchscreen. Actually, it's great. This is not a Wi-Fi enabled machine, but having a touchscreen means you can do walkthroughs for setting it up, you can do troubleshooting, you can offer a lot of guidance. The touchscreen is perfectly fine in terms of usability. I think that's a really nice upgrade to these kind of machines. I think the steaming is excellent. One thing, and I particularly love, is that when you remove the drip tray, and if you twist the dial, you can just move your machine around the counter really, really easily. That's just great. I love that you can load water in the top, so you can fill from the front if you put your machine in your kitchen, it's the back, but you still have a fully removable water tank that can be accessed from the back. That's kind of nice thinking. Things I don't love as much. The grinder does suffer the same problem that many other grinders do, which is as it gets hotter, as you use it more, its grind setting does shift a little bit. So what I would tend to do is, because I would just make a couple of drinks in the morning and that was it, I would have the machine switch itself on about half an hour before I wanted to get up. It was nice and hot. I would come down, pull a shot, clean up, be done. If I had to pull 2, 3, 4 or 5 shots, then I know my grind would change, but at the end of doing that, I would just reset my grinder back to the original number. That way, when I woke up the next morning and it was ready to pull its first shot of the day, it was at the right grind setting. And grind settings held pretty well for me in testing. For me, the grinder is okay. I kind of wish I had more control again. And again, I wish I had a little bit more control over the dose going in. Typically, these doses are pretty high, and that's not how I usually brew coffee. So again, I'm probably not the target audience here, but I have to be honest in the things that I would want to change or want more control over. And lastly, there is the price point. It's £2,000. That's not cheap. And I know that that's not a bad thing. You get a really well built, good quality machine. You get good support in the UK and other places. But you can't help but mention that price. It's a little bit higher than a lot of other domestic bean to cups. That said, I would anticipate you're going to have a lot less issues. This can run you through your own descaling programs. There's just less parts to go wrong compared to a traditional bean to cup. In summary, if you are an espresso obsessive and you want to play with your coffee, this is probably not the machine for you. It won't offer you enough control, enough granularity about your coffee brewing. If you're someone who does actually want that coffee at home, cappuccinos in the morning, a little flat white, but you don't want a new hobby, well, I guess Sage have built this machine for you, and I have to say they've done a pretty good job. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to comment, if you want to ask a question, ask it down below. I will do my best to answer every one. If you enjoyed this, let me know. If you have someone in your life who got one of these for Christmas, send this their way. Go and see them, go and have a coffee, see what you think. I'll be back with some more reviews in the new year. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.